Hi, and welcome to the first in a series of videos that will help you study for your semester final. These videos will be good if you miss class or if you just don't feel like you were able to pay good attention in class as we spent Friday and Monday studying for this information. So the first blank, the first box on your study guide that you're making for yourself, ask the question, what is an atom? So the definition of the word atom is this: the smallest indivisible piece of an element. Remember the word indivisible means can't be divided. So you can think about this like this. Say I have a piece of, say, silver, and I can cut it in half, and I just have two smaller pieces of silver, right? And I cut those in half, and I still have smaller pieces of silver. They're still silvery color, they're still metal, they're still hard. And I can keep doing that. I can keep cutting them in half, cutting them in smaller pieces, but the smaller pieces still have the properties of silver until I get down to a silver atom. And when I get to that point, I can cut it in half again, but it's not silver anymore. It's just some little pieces of protons and neutrons and electrons. So that's the definition of an atom. It's the smallest indivisible piece of an element. So let's talk a little bit about the different parts of an atom. The first thing we want to draw is the protons. So here are some protons. They're little tiny particles that have a positive electric charge. And those live in the nucleus of an atom. So let's write this in here. Proton, P-R-O-T-O-N. And you can see that I've given them a positive charge. Then we have neutrons, which have a neutral electric charge. Let's draw some of those in here as well. Now, when we draw this kind of thing, we always want to remember that this is not exactly what these particles look like. These are kind of cartoons of the particles. They're not scientifically super duper accurate, but they're accurate enough to help us have something to visualize as we learn about these tiny building blocks of matter. So these ones that don't have an electric charge were neutrons, N-E-U-T-R-O-N. Now, orbiting the nucleus of an atom in energy levels or shells are some other particles, and those particles are called electrons. They have, you can see, a negative electric charge, E-L-E-C-T-R-O-N. They have a negative electric charge. Now, let's talk about mass really quickly. The mass of a proton is 1 AMU. That's called atomic mass unit. The mass of a neutron is 1 AMU. The mass of an electron is so tiny that we kind of don't even talk about it in high school. It's there, but it's so tiny that it doesn't really weigh in, if you will, when we talk about the mass of an atom. So now that we've talked about the different parts of an atom, let's talk about the blocks on the periodic table that help describe what an atom is like and how it's built. So we're talking about the periodic table in class, have been, and it's important that you understand that the periodic table is not just a whole bunch of boxes with random things thrown in there. It's arranged in a very specific way. And each box on the periodic table has some specific information that tells us a lot about the element it describes. So let's take, for example, the block that describes the element lithium. So the first thing you'll notice is that it's got an abbreviation. Li is the abbreviation for lithium. Usually the periodic table will have the name of the element spelled out. And usually it will have a number, a whole number, written pretty big somewhere toward the top. In this case, the atomic number for lithium is 3. So let's label that here, atomic number. And it's important to know that the atomic number describes the number of protons in an atom, and it also describes the number of electrons, because we know that most atoms are electrically neutral. In other words, they have the same number of positive charges and negative charges. So if this atom has 3 protons, it has to have 3 electrons as well. So we'll just go ahead and put this in here, number of electrons. And this assumes electric neutrality. In other words, it's not an ion. We'll get to that later. So you'll notice that I've drawn the box that describes the atom that we just drew. This is lithium. It has 3 protons. And look, we had drawn an atom with 3 protons. It also has 3 electrons. And look, we had drawn an atom with 3 electrons. We'll talk about placement later. Now, the slightly stickier topic of how many neutrons an atom has to do with the other number that's on the periodic table. In this case, the atomic mass of lithium is 6.941-ish, some change. The atomic mass is usually written in smaller print on the periodic table. We'll put this over here, atomic mass. The atomic mass describes the total particles in the nucleus of an atom. In nucleus. So that means that we can use that number to figure out how many neutrons are in an average atom of that element. Now, we know that that this describes the number of protons in an element or in the atom. So this is an atom of lithium because it has 3 protons. The neutrons can vary depending on what isotope of the atom it is. But an average atom, we could find how many neutrons it has by taking this. And this is, say, about 7, right? 6.94 is about 7. If we know that it has 7 of these particles, if 3 of them are protons, that means that 4 of them have to be neutrons, right? Because 7 minus 7 particles, we'll put that here, minus 3 protons equals 4 neutrons, right? So we could do that little math problem to figure out how many neutrons will be in an average atom of that element. So that is all you really need to know for the semester exam about the definition of an atom, what an atom is composed of, and the blocks in the periodic table that describe each element.